Hey guys, it's Mrs. Still. This time we're here talking about compositional techniques. I have a few pictures here that I've taken, and we want to talk about which compositional technique each fits with, and then how we can edit each one to maybe make it into a different compositional technique. Um, Now, of course, when you're taking the photo is the best time to figure out what kind of compositional technique you're using, but sometimes you can go back and fix that with editing. Now, this first photo, it's really simple to determine which compositional technique we used. It's a simplified background. Okay, so anytime you have a solid background or a blurry background so that your focal point is the only thing really to look at, that's a simplified background. Now, I could go in and do a little bit of editing to this one, maybe brighten it a little, maybe crop it a little, but it looks great the way it is, and I don't want to mess with it right now. So let's move on to the next one. Now in this one, we have this sweet little flower, and behind it we have the lake and the mountains. Now the background's a little blurry, but it's not blurry enough to say that it's a simplified background. It also is definitely not fill the frame, because remember, to fill the frame, the focal point would need to actually be so large that it's going off the edges of the frame. So we would have to come in so close to this flower to have it be filling the frame, and I don't think that's a very successful photograph. And we kind of lose some of the detail in the flower because we've zoomed in so much. So we definitely wouldn't want to do that. But what we could do is maybe make the rule of thirds part of this stand out a little bit more. We already have a little bit of rule of thirds going on, but let's make sure. Okay, so we're going to share this to Snapseed, and we're going to go to Tools, and we're going to use the Crop tool. And when we use the Crop tool, what we're going to see is that it makes this grid on top of our photo. And remember that where these lines intersect are what are called our sweet spots. So if I move this around, I can figure out, right, if I go right here, we don't want to do that because the flower's in the middle. What we want is for the flower to be on or near these sweet spots, because this is our focal point. So right where these lines intersect at the top and these lines intersect at the bottom, our flower falls right along those lines, and therefore we know that now we have a great example of rule of thirds. And if we go back to view edits, just so we can see the original, right? And then when we cropped it, we can see that the flower moved over just a little to the right, and it also made it a little bit bigger, which is nice. And I think that that's a nice edit. Now I'm going to go out of here. Oops. And we're going to go to another photo. This one has this nice bunny head. Background is pretty simplified, right? There's not much going on. This bunny head is kind of right in the middle of the picture though. And so again, I'm going to share this to Snapseed, and we could do a couple things here. I'm going to go to the Crop tool, and we could move this over so that we've got the eye right there on that sweet spot. We could bring this in, okay? And, we could do a few things with this. Maybe if we brought it in here, now we've got more of a rule of thirds going on. But the other thing that we can do, and I'm going to go back and undo what I just did, is if we wanted to fill the frame, then when we go into the Crop tool, we're going to bring this in a whole lot more and maybe crop this down just like this, and then use our check mark. And now we've got a great example of filling the frame. This bunny head is so close up that the edges of it are actually going off of the frame. Okay, and that is what fill the frame is all about. We're so close up that we hardly see any background, if any at all. And we could, of course, get even closer up if we wanted to, but I'm not going to go there right now. Let's exit out of here and go back again. Now, I just wanted to show you the difference between this photo, which this butterfly or moth was on the other side of a window. It's kind of cool. It looks kind of wavy. The background's pretty simplified, so you could go that route. But you could also maybe even fill this frame a little bit more with this and make it stand out a little bit more. So that was a closer up version of that, which again, kind of qualifies as both filling the frame and also a simplified background. If we wanted to, we could get even closer up. But again, we lose a little of the, detail in the picture. This one's a great example of a simplified background. There's nothing really there. It's just cement. And then if we, were to go into the crop tool, we could definitely see that it's a great example of rule of thirds as well, because the snail shell is right on top of those sweet spots. Now we could, if we wanted to, maybe crop it a little bit more. Okay, bring that over here and make that spiral right on top of where those lines cross over. And then we could do some more edits to it. We could add some contrast, some saturation, things like that. Maybe turn it black and white. You can think of many things we could do to it, but for now we're moving on because all we want to talk about today is composition. This picture, great example of filling the frame, okay? Now, we see a little background and it is simple, but anytime you have something that's so close up and it's going off the edges of the frame, you have an example of filling the frame. This picture, great example of rule of thirds. Again, all you have to do is look and see that purple flower is kind of in the corner there. And anytime you have something that's a little off center, maybe close to a corner or close to an edge, you have an example of rule of thirds. Again, we could go into that crop tool and check. We could move it around a little bit more if we wanted to, but not necessary. Okay. This photo, you guessed it, we've got a fill the frame, right? So this flower, edges going off, and we could even crop it down a little bit more. I think it kind of needs it, actually. So we'd go in, get our crop tool, bring these edges in, maybe get rid of that leaf over there in the corner, and just really bring it in to this middle part of the flower. And now that's a much more close-up, fill the frame shot of this gorgeous purpley flower that I love so much. Let's go back. We're going to exit. We're going to go back. This time, I want to show you a little trick. So this picture has a leaf, and in the background we have the lake and the sky. Again, the background is a little simple, but it's not simple enough to call it a simplified background. So what we can do is we can make the background more blurry. And I'm going to show you a couple ways to do that. The other route we could go with this one, of course, is rule of thirds, because you can see that the leaf is a little off to the side here. I'm going to share this to Snapseed. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my tools and I'm going to go to the lens blur. And I want to move the center here right on top of the leaf, and I'm going to change the shape of the tool so that it covers pretty much the leaf right here. Move that center over. And then remember, when you swipe up, you can go to other options here. I'm going to lessen that transition strength. And then I'm going to go up to the blur strength again. And when I slide my finger to the right, I'm blurring everything except the part that I have selected there, which is the leaf. Now, if I say okay to that, you can see that it also kind of blurred the edges of my leaf. And I don't really like the way that looks. I want to do something else. So I'm going to go back and view my edits, and I'm going to go back to the lens blur, and I want to fix this. Okay, so I'm going to go to my tuning, and I'm going to bring this in. Now, you might say, why are you doing that? Because you're making the edges more blurry, but I'll show you why. Okay, what I wanted to do was make sure that the blur was all the way around the leaf, and then I'm going to hit my check mark. Now, I'm going to go back to my tools, and I'm going to do a double exposure. Now, when I do a double exposure, what I'm doing is I'm adding another photo on top of this one. So we're going to hit this little button that looks like a picture of mountains with a little plus sign here. And I'm going to browse some files in some other apps. I'm going to go to my Google Photos, And I'm going to come down here to my special folder somewhere down here that's called Compositional Techniques and pick the same exact picture. I really wish it would put it in the same position that it was in before, but that's okay. And what we want to do is line this up the best we can right on top of there. Make sure that it's not like this. Okay, we want to get it right here in place. That looks pretty good. And then we have some options here. So in the middle, we can choose different blends, and I don't really want to mess with those right now. Okay, so I'm going to go back to default. But the other thing I can do is adjust how much it's blending. So if I go down, it's not going to do much of anything, right? I'm totally making the top layer go away. And if I move this all the way up, I'm covering up the layer underneath it, which is the blurry layer, which is what I want to do right now, and I'll show you why. So you have to imagine this layer that I'm just made perfectly clear is on top of that layer I had there a minute ago, which is blurry. I'm going to hit my check mark. And by the way, this is how Photoshop works. So when we start getting into Photoshop, you'll see the similarities. Layers are what makes Photoshop so amazing, and that's pretty much what we're doing right here is we're playing with layers. Now I'm going to go up to View Edits, and I'm going to go back to that double exposure, and I'm going to go to my paintbrush. Now, remember, this takes me back to my original photo that I had before that one. And what I can do now is adjust with my numbers from 0 to 25, 50, 75, and 100. And I can paint on my leaf clear and crisp. And then I can leave my background blurry. Now I messed up a little around the edges. I can go back in and touch those up. And now I've got a super nice, crisp, clear leaf on top of my blurry background. So I've got a great example of a simplified background now as well. I'm going to go ahead and go back, and we're going to look at just a couple more. And I know I keep skipping past that butterfly thing, but we're not looking at that. Let's do one more example here. I just wanted to show you, well, two more. This one's a great example of a simplified background. We don't have to do anything to it, okay? We also have a great example of rule of thirds because this bug is a little off to the side here. And so there's not really much that we need to do, maybe a few adjustments, but we got a great picture to begin with. This picture, really cool flower. It's actually a weed, but it's a really pretty weed. And we do have a blurry background. It's pretty simplified. Again, we could go into our crop tool, and we could maybe blow this up like this, and we could have more of a fill the frame photo. Okay, or we could have it be more off to the side, and we could have more of a rule of thirds example here. The last couple here, we have my kitty cat with a flower here, and this is a great example of rule of thirds because our focal point would be that flower, which is really the brightest part, along with the cat's eyes. And, you know, when we zoom in here, you can see that part stands out a lot, and it is off to the side, and we have a great example of rule of thirds here. Okay, last example, my dog Bella. Isn't she cute? This photo is not bad. And we have a, you know, it's kind of simplified background and kind of rule of thirds. But what we could also do is we could fill the frame with this. Now, we don't want to do this unless the picture has good quality to begin with, because if you zoom in on a picture too closely and the quality isn't good to begin with, then you get a really pixely or blurry photo. But I know I took this photo with a good camera, and I know that if I blow it up a little bit, it's still going to look good. So I'm going to go ahead and share this to Snapseed and just show you that once again, and I could do a few edits to this before I go into my tools. But I just want to show you when I crop this, what happens. So if I bring this in and bring this in and hit my check mark. And then the other thing that I kind of want to do is rotate this because I think it'll look really cute facing the other way. So I'm going to go to Tools, and I'm going to go to Rotate and flip it just like that. Oh, isn't that cute? Now I could also go in She has a few eye boogies we could get rid of with our healing tool. But pretty cute picture of Bella. I think she's adorable and great example of filling the frame, okay? It's obvious Bella is the focal point and we're filling up the frame with her cute little face, okay? And we have her ears going off the edge of the frame. That's how we know it's fill the frame. Hardly any background to look at. Okay, that's the end of my demonstration. I hope that makes it a little more clear as far as what those different compositional techniques look like. Until next time, happy editing.